Good afternoon, everybody. It's Miss Jamie. Hope that you had a fantastic Easter and a nice spring break. This is a band lesson. Anyone who is in the beginner band or the advanced band, this will be a review for you. Very good information. Some things that I maybe have not taken the time to explain as clearly as I will today. It's a lesson about something called articulation. So listen in. I'm going to show you some examples of what articulation looks like, teach you a few new terms, and show you what the musical symbols look like on your music and how to follow them. So follow along, and when we're finished, I'll give you some assignments where you can practice articulation. All right, here we go. Okay, let's start with the word articulation. You see it in bold letters at the beginning of this paragraph. Articulation in music refers to how specific notes or passages are played or sung. Composers and arrangers provide articulation directions in the form of written notation, and that means little symbols that are placed above or below the notes. If you look at the 5 notes here, each of them has a different symbol directly above the note. Sometimes you would find it below the note if the stem were pointing up. And these little pieces of information tell the player exactly how to play that note. The word articulation, not referring to music, in everyday life would be a word that tells us how clearly a person is speaking so that a person can understand what they're saying. If I were to talk to you and say, "Hello and happy Easter, I hope you had a good day," it would be very hard to understand what I said. But if I articulate well and say my consonants and vowels correctly, you would hear, "Hello, happy Easter. I hope you had a great day." That's what articulation is. And so with music, we want to make sure each note is played clearly and in the direct way that the composer or arranger has asked us to play it so that it conveys the right message very clearly to the listener. All right, let's get down to the part in our red book where you can see articulation in your music. Okay, friends, the first term I want you to see here is the word slur, S-L-U-R. A slur is when you have a curved line that connects 2 or more pitches, and they are different pitches. A curved line that connects 2 or more notes of different pitch. Let's look at an example of that in our music. This warm-up shows several different measures with the slurs underneath the notes. And each slur starts at the beginning of the curved line and ends at the end of the curved line. And then you start a new slur here in the next measure at the beginning of a new slur line, and it ends here. When you connect the notes, you do not use your tongue to separate them. First, I'm going to play the notes the way that we normally would if we did not see a slur. If a slur was not there, what would it sound like? Let me play an example for you. So that was an example of regular tonguing. Now look at this example and listen to me tongue the first note on the first measure, but I will slur to the second note because that's what this slur mark tells me to do. Just the first measure. They were connected, they were not separated. Here's an example of separated. Here's an example of slurred, which is what the articulation direction shows us. Now, slurring, you always start with the tongue on the first note, but all of the notes included in the slur mark you would not tongue. Look at the second measure. It starts with a tongue on that first note, then you slur to the second one and slur to the third one. Look at that second measure right here. All of those notes were connected. They were not separate like this. They were all connected together. Just to be clear, the first note of each measure we tongue, you do not use a tongue for the notes after that, but when there's a break between the slurs, you start the next one with a tongue again, and do not tongue these, and then there's a break, and you start with a new tongue again here. Each measure in this example starts with a new tongue. Look at this example. In the first measure, tongue, 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 slur. Tongue, 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 and here you slur to that note. So remember, when you see a slur mark, you don't slur until after you've played that first note with your tongue. T, t, t. And then you slur to this note, okay? Okay, let's look at this definition. This is a different one. We have done this before, and it's called a tie. A tie looks so much like a slur, but it's different. A tie is connecting two notes of the same pitch, the same curved line, but you see this is an E on the treble clef, this is also an E, and it's connecting them. The only thing it's doing is adding value to the note. The first note there is a half note, it gets 2 beats. Right here, the second one is a quarter that gets 1 beat, and when you connect them with a tie, you would hold it for 3 beats total, and you would not tongue the second note. Ta, ta would be without a tie, or ta, 3 beats with a tie. That is not the same as a slur. As you see here, each note in a slur is being connected. They are different notes, F to E, and back to F, E to D, E, D, E. If it was all the same note, it would just be called a tie. But it's important that you start by tonguing and you keep the air going through your instrument. Do not stop it, and simply change your fingering position to go to the next note. Change your lips, and if you need to, change your air speed or airflow depending on what you do with your instrument. But the important thing to remember is that you tongue this note and you just move to that one without any tonguing. Okay, next I want you to see this new word, staccato. Staccato means separated or detached. And again, these are Italian words, which we know about most of our musical terms. Staccato means separated or detached. It feels like you're playing the note a little bit shorter because you're leaving a space between this note with a dot and the next note that follows. And usually when you play staccato, you'll see several notes in a row with a dot right above or right below it. I wrote little staccato dots under these notes. The first two do not have staccato, but you see these notes, the E's and the G, F, E here, they have little dots under them saying I should play them separated and detached from one another. So this is the opposite of a slur. A slur is smooth and connected, and that's what this symbol reminds us. Keep it smooth and connected. But the opposite of that is staccato, and that's going to be separated and detached. Let me play an example of this, the little fish, for you, just the first 2 or 3 measures, and listen to how separated and detached the notes are. Sorry if my phone is a bit shaky. I'm holding it with one hand and my instrument in the other. So look at this, the first 3 measures of the little fish. Listen to it. Each note was separated. Now, if those dots were not there, it would be legato. They sound a little more connected. I'm using my tongue and they're a little more connected. But with the dots, they're all separated. Take a look at number 66, the scale skill. It starts out with two notes that are slurred together, and remember we tongue the first, slur to the second. Then we have two notes that are just your basic legato. They're not staccato, they're not too short, they're just normal, and we tongue them. Then we'll tongue this first note and slur to this second one. Tongue this first note, slur to this second one, and then we tongue these two because they don't have anything that tells us to slur them. So as you read music, you need to be able to slur and tongue interchangeably when the music tells us to. So I'm going to be assigning an example to you with some slurring and regular tonguing. And when I listen to your entry on Smart Music, what I want to hear is tonguing on each note, and when there is a slur symbol, slurring to that second note. Okay, I'm having issues with my trumpet valve, but I'm going to do my best to play number 66, or at least a portion of it, where you can hear a difference between where I slur and where I tongue. So watch your music, watch those slur markings, and see if I do it correctly. I hope you were able to hear a difference where there was a slur and a tongue there. So I am going to assign number 66 to you on Smart Music. This is for every student in all of the bands, regardless of grade, level. You're going to slur the first two, tongue the next two. You start out with a tongue here, slur to here, slur these two, tongue these two, all the way across. I'm going to see if you can do the articulation the way that it is showing you in the music. If your notes aren't perfect, but I can tell that you're slurring or tonguing where you're supposed to, that's okay. That's what I'm really looking for the most. One last reminder, anytime you're playing, whether you slur or tongue or play staccato, it doesn't matter. Remember that you always use a lot of air. You should be filling up down here, full of air, and you should be using your diaphragm to push that air through your body. Not in a for each note, but constant for all of the notes in a row. Only breathe when you need a new breath. Don't breathe between every note. If I were doing tongue, 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 slur, that would all be one big breath. It shouldn't be tongue, 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 slur, tongue, right? That would be ridiculous and choppy. Make sure that you are using one really big breath, blowing with all your might through the entire phrase, and then you take another big breath when you need it. Okay, I'm looking forward to see how you do with your slurring and your tonguing, and it's otherwise known as articulation this week. In the comments below, tell me what you think the word articulation means using your own words. And bonus points if you can use the word slur or staccato in your definition. All right, be sure to get your Smart Music assignments finished and submit them to me by this Friday. If you can't get Smart Music to work, play number 66 in your book and have someone record it and send me the recording. All right, talk to you later. Bye, guys.